Hello and welcome back to our series for Saptarishis Astrology. Today we have a great pleasure of welcoming two very experienced people. First of all, Ryan Kurzak. Hi, Ryan.
Hello.
And second, Eve of Astrology. She has a wonderful and vast experience about the nakshatras, about which we're going to talk today. And she is our main focus today. Ryan and me will try to bring all the secrets out which they can tell about Ashlesha Nakshatra. Welcome, Eve.
Thank you, Inge.
Most welcome. It is such an honor and pleasure to meet you here in this frame.
It's such an honor to work with both you and Ryan. Thank you. Thank you.
Before we go deeper into this, our today's topic, please let us know how you approached this vast subject of astrology, how you entered into this field.
Wow, that is a story. So I'm going to just simplify it. I started studying astrology about probably 21, 22 years ago, with Western, because that's all I had access to. And I was so young at the time. And then quite quickly, I got exposed to Vedic astrology because anything I do it with a bit of passion. So I really threw myself in head first. And I was also teaching myself Sanskrit. I was also teaching myself Shiva mantras at the time as well. So I don't know why, honestly. If you were to ask me, I was just drawn to it. I couldn't focus on anything but that at the time. So a group of friends were going to India, and I just decided to kind of jump on the plane. And I ended up being the one that stayed. And ever since then, I've really had more of the personality of a researcher. I've been quite hidden, and more comfortable in that space, honestly. Until about 2009, 2010, I came back to the U.S. permanently, and I've been practicing. I guess you would call it practicing. This truly is my sadhana. And I was taught Jyotish as a form of devotion.
Yes.
And so honestly, you're going to see everything that I present, even with nakshatras. We're not going to get into mental gymnastics. We're not going to get into intellectual techniques. All of that stuff naturally comes. I find you follow me. So I think any of us who are in love with this this form of knowledge, it's the life of its own. But any of us that are in love with this, we find out that techniques only will take you so far. And if you don't have the appropriate devotion, don't get me wrong, the intellect is so important for giving parameters. If you had all these people running around here saying, oh, it's my intuition, you get a nightmare, and you get a lot of that. People just, not thinking about what they say, they just feel it. And feeling isn't true intuition anyway.
Right.
But a lot of what I'm going to present with Ashlesha Nakshatra has been through actual, deeper contemplation on this nakshatra and inviting that energy directly into my life.
Yes, that is a very good point which you speak, because to just read and read and read is one thing, but to actually go deep, and I feel that's what you have done. You have gone very deep into the nakshatras. You have sort of specialized into them.
Yeah, for some reason. I couldn't tell you why. But yes, that's been my focus.
Right. So we're going to share a small presentation just to keep one road maintaining for you. And we will hang up on each of your words.
Okay. Okay, well, first of all, should I go ahead and share the screen? Is everyone ready for me to? Okay, so,
Yes.
all right. Forgive my lack of tech savviness. Okay. All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay, okay. So
Beautifully.
before I start to share, I would like to just offer a short mantra because once again, I just want to pull the focus back to devotion and to the fact that nothing can be learned without devotion, and therefore nothing can be learned without bowing your head. And this is a very important part of this nakshatra as well, is to learn to bow the head. Because, you know, we've got here the throat, we've got this throat chakra, right? We've got Lord Shiva, who's called Nilkant, because he drank the poison, right? And this
Yes.
throat point is very important. We don't often realize, but it connects head and heart, head and body. So we've got what Rahu and Ketu now, they're divided, right? So I will just, I always start by speaking the mantra to activate the connection between these two. Om Gam Ganapate Namaha. Om Aim Saraswate Namaha. Om Ganana Amtva Ganapatika Havamahe. Tadam Kavinam Upamasravastamam. Jeshtarajam Brahmanat Brahmanas Pata Anusranvan. Nurte Visida Sadhanam. Om Ketave Namaha. Okay. Okay, so we see here with Ashlesha, we clearly have a theme of serpents. I'm going to guess that most people attending or most people watching this have possibly done other research on Ashlesha. This will give you somewhat of a foundation of Ashlesha, but of course not all the little details that you should probably learn in the beginning. So we have an association with Lord Shiva with this nakshatra. We have an association with Ketu. Some sources say that, you know, Ketu was born under this nakshatra. Hence I have, okay, so I don't know why it's not letting me move on my presentation. There we go.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to kind of start out with some basics. And here we see fractals too. And that's not the part I'm expressing about Ashlesha. We've got Punarvasu, which is the other female cat. The Yoni is the female cat, which would deal much more with the principle of fractals and things that repeat in nature, designs that repeat. However, the spiral shape. So we've got Ashlesha coming in as the male cat. So both nakshatras are the cat. And it's interesting that you could use both of these, any of these pictures for either nakshatra. But we've got the sacredness of the spiral shape. And this is a very important point to this nakshatra because the embracing, the entwining, the clinging that people speak about in this nakshatra has a lot to do with the winding and unwinding of the mind. So when you follow like this, the principles of yoga, and you think of sanskars, or you know, the past life impressions, you know, they wind tightly and grip the mind and form a sense of identity. Correct. So
Right.
so this coil of the serpent, and then there's the unwinding of consciousness that, or the unwinding of these impressions that we're seeking through yoga, through union, through devotion, through applying our mind in these ways, is kind of an unlearning of what you've learned. The more you think you know, the more you don't know.
Right.
And to grasp a nakshatra like Ashlesha, you actually have to come in with your head down because there's such a tremendous force. And people born under this nakshatra don't often realize the force that they're capable of carrying. And we'll get into more of that. But I wanted to address the connecting and uniting or constricting and controlling aspects of this nakshatra and the binding and bonding capacity of the mind. And here I have to give some credit to a woman named Jane Ann Thomas. She's a kind of a student of nature, someone that I might be writing, well, I am going to be writing a nakshatra book with, because she studies more of the Celtic and natural traditions of the people of the earth. And without understanding nature, we're not going to get this. You know, we won't get anything about nakshatras, or most things in the Rig Veda are all elemental, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So she, you know, I've heard her use this word choice, and I think it's a very good word choice for Ashlesha's, the capacity of binding or bonding. And so you can either bind something, constrict it and control it, and therefore limit it or hurt it possibly, or dominate it, or you can bond to something. You can embrace something. And bonding is very key to the spiritual life. It's very key to understanding something truly, right? So I just wanted to bring up that real stark definition between binding and bonding, because it's a major problem in our culture. Or even our language is very dominative. We seek to dominate. We say it. We say that. It's very impersonal. So I don't know if you guys can hear in the back. I'm sorry, my phone is going. I should
we don't listen.
If it distracts you, please let me know.
Okay, yeah, we can't hear it.
So do you have any questions about anything here that I'm just kind of summarizing? This is pretty clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have the clockwise and counterclockwise spiral, or the motion of time as well. The Druids would even connect the serpent to time. So when you're getting into a nakshatra like the Ashlesha, you're getting into even the principles of, you know, I hate to use this word, but magic. Okay, so we have, like, you know, fascination with magical principle in our culture. We see all these movies, we see all these films, that are almost silly, and they're based on magical principle, but really there is a cosmic law, you would say, a magical law, you could say, and a natural law. And so the clockwise and counterclockwise movement of things becomes important. And there you see the swastika as well. So you can see how going clockwise, it's creative or auspicious. Going counterclockwise is destructive. Okay. So, okay. So we've got the birth of Ketu, as I mentioned. And this is just a little simple slide, just, you know, for any of you who want to take a screenshot. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. But some of the stuff we already addressed with the ego identity. So the entanglement, the gripping of the sense of identity of the pure reflective mind, right? So this is really what that winding or unwinding becomes about. And we've got the, you know, of course, the DNA genetic code. The nakshatra directly after this, Magha, right, is also activated by Ketu. And that nakshatra has a lot to do with genetics. So you can see this is also a nakshatra based on vibration.
Ashlesha.
Yes, sensing subtle vibrations. And vibrations are what hold the entire universe together. So here we get that connective energy again. We get that binding or bonding. We get the pulling together of forces, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a major connectivity here with the principles of Ashlesha. You'll see that there's a lot of magnetism in this nakshatra. There's, you know, it's a very interesting nakshatra. So
magnetizing, hypnotizing also, no?
Yes, definitely. Yes. And so it's that power to draw things to itself and to entwine around them. God, you can either squeeze life out, you know, you have to be careful with, which we'll get to, or you can unite with something and pull forces together. So,
so when you're thinking about these things and you're focusing on the vibration, how do you determine, and maybe you'll get to that later on, like the idea of trembling and agitation and
I'm going to get to that.
Paralysis. Okay.
Yeah, and I have a really good example for that, because that is a very real part of this nakshatra. I'm definitely not trying to sugarcoat. Mm-hmm. This nakshatra has some very poisonous, very destructive qualities, mm-hmm. but it's like anything else in nature that is to be respected. So, you know, a serpent, if you back it in the corner, it's going to bite you. But, you know, I live out here in the desert. I have rattlesnakes come up to my door. They don't care about me. They're not seeking to bite me, you know. They don't care. If I go out there and threaten it, it will bite me. you know, so, or she, he will bite me. So, I think that is an important part of this nakshatra, is it's just not seeking to hurt people, but it definitely has the power to, and it definitely can be directed that way if the rest of the horoscope is aggressive. Right? So we definitely will get into, because that is one of the key themes of life lessons for this nakshatra, is recognizing its power. Okay, so I just wanted to go into a little bit of the older side of this, because this can also help people understand how to work with this nakshatra. So we have the serpent Rishi Arbuda, and it's very mysterious. There's only one verse in the Rig Veda. You know, you see here the Aitreya Brahmana, and you see this story about him teaching the gods, doing mantras over their squeezing stones, the stones that were meant to squeeze every bit of the soma out, you know, for their consumption. And so this, I would highly recommend other people doing research on this to get more deep into this. But it's interesting that he was responsible for blessing the stones that squeeze the soma out. Okay, so this is that ability to squeeze every bit of energy from a situation or a person. You know, you see here inexhaustible energy, concentrated focus, an energy that needs to be replenished by seclusion. And I see this theme very often. If you study about Arbuda, you know, Arbuda was Rishi Arbuda was the son of Kadru. And he was, you know, being serpent-like, he had to go back into his hole. And right after he would come and teach them the mantras, and they called him the framer of mantras. I'm not really sure what I mean, you could meditate on that and see a lot with that if you think about Ashlesha Nakshatra as well, because in Pushya, you get the sacred sound, right? You get Brihaspati, you get the Lord of Words, literally Brihat Spati. And so this following Nakshatra Ashlesha that's activated by Mercury, you also get a power of speech and incantation. Okay, so, and this definitely can be used for darker purposes. I mean, some of the things that they say about that, you know, for sure. So alchemy and transmutation is a huge theme. The ability to transmute poison into medicine or medicine into poison. And this is a very important thing for Ashlesha people to understand, because there is something with the regeneration and rejuvenation of Ashlesha people. Ashlesha people, especially if you have at certain places in your horoscope, there are the tendencies to either be in poisonous situations. You look at Gandhi Ji, who's a very famous Ashlesha nakshatra.
Moon. Yeah, the moon, no?
Yes.
Gandhiji had the moon in the 10th house.
And I believe Rahu may have been sitting there with the moon. I'm not sure. I have to look. I don't want to pull up his chart, but yes. But he, if you think about people who transmute poison into medicine, he took the anger of the British. He took the anger of people. He just took it. He just took it on. And he was an alchemist. He's a true alchemist. So you will see the higher side of Ashlesha has a great ability towards alchemy in many levels. You'll even see people that work with chemicals and chemical compounds, pharmaceuticals, things like that, on the lowest level. But you'll see that there's a great ability to transmute and a great ability to transcend if the person knows how to direct their energy, or a great ability to inflict poison if they don't. And they can really turn medicine into poison as well. Okay, so meaning they can turn a good situation into something very destructive as well. So it goes both ways.
Yes, just a small question I have.
Sure.
When we mention about the Ashlesha people, it can be what? Like ascendant rising, like a moon.
Lagna is very important. Lagna, Chandra, is Surya, of course. Atmakaraka, Lagnesh, Lord of Lagna. You know, any prominent graha though. So let's say someone has Malavya yoga and they have that in Ashlesha. It's going to, I've seen that over and over. If someone has just one of those Mahapurush yogas, even though they're common, whatever nakshatra that's in, there's a theme that goes on there.
This is going to activate that.
Yeah, or if it's deeply debilitated and agitated, you know, you've got to remember the quality of the graha that's sitting in this nakshatra, and in the nature of that graha, right? So Venus or Shukra, then you have to think about who Shukracharya is.
Right.
Right? So and you have to think about, with Jupiter, you have to think of who Brihaspati is. With Surya, you have to think about who Surya is. What is Surya? Who is Surya? Not just, oh, it's the sun, but what is the nature of Surya? And then Chandra as well. So any of these nakshatras always, in Mercury is going to gain a little bit of special importance according to the Vimshottari Dasha, because he activates. It activates the qualities of this nakshatra. So when Mercury's sitting there, it's interesting.
How interesting.
I think that's very interesting. I think you get the real alchemist there. And I'd have to see the rest of the horoscope. Please note that. There could be so many things that mess that up. But if you get it in a moksha house, so you're looking at 12,
4, 8, 12.
4, 8, 12. Because those houses are geared towards devotion. They're geared towards the mystery. I mean, they can have other problems. Now, see, once again, we're so used to limiting speech. We're so used to dominating each other. I do not want to bring that atmosphere into Vedic astrology or Jyotish. I can't, because that's not our true nature. So that, yes, the 8th, 12th, and 4th house can have some problems. But then you look at the higher elements of it, and they're really geared towards devotion and mysteries. I mean, really simplified version. Yeah. So you get Mercury there, and it is in Ashlesha, you say? Mm-hmm. So like, let's say Ashlesha is there in, let's say, 12th house. God, that's very alchemical to me. That would give great power to intention, actually. Because if you think about the 12th house, it's a place of hidden talents as well, things that we don't realize that we're talented in, or that we come to realize. When we come to realize, we have to really pull it out. And it can also be what we gain energy from or lose energy to in a severe way too. That's a very interesting, yeah, I'd have to know what the Karaka was, like what Mercury was doing in that chart. But Mercury there also gives great power of speech. I would say I would encourage a person to learn mantra or pranayam, even control of the breath. See, once again, we've got the flow, Kriya Yoga, actually. Yeah.
Right. So it's very transformational in that inner way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Didn't mean to sidetrack you there.
No, I was just reading into something there.
Okay. It's okay.
So, but I like that alignment. I like to see Mercury in Ashlesha. So, okay. So now this is quite intense. I'm not just going to sit here and read this. Anyone can take a screenshot of it. Forgive typos. I'm not trying to be perfect with this. Perfection is an unrealistic goal. You learn that quickly, studying Jyotish. It's pretty humbling. But so defining our reality through speech. Okay, here, this is a very important thing. Speaking of Mercury and Ashlesha, there is something that there's a power that can subjugate life through speech. Okay, and there's also a power that can connect to life through speech and define it. So being aware that we're defining our reality through our speech, and I feel that Ashlesha people need to be particularly aware of it, speaking negative about others. With Ashlesha, I usually encourage them not to get involved in judgment, backbiting, seeking limits, limiting a person, narrowing down, squeezing them, they actually have a very powerful force that they may not realize. And you could even call this in a way black magic. And it's such a loose term in this culture, and we think of like a sorcerer with a hat. But voice, why do we think about this for a minute? This is so beautiful. So you hear in the Rig Veda, and you hear in all these different places, Mother Saraswati, right? She's the matrix. She's the matrix of creation. She's the Shakti of Lord Brahma. And what do you call her? Vakdevi, goddess of speech, right? So there's this powerful principle here with the speech, once again, going back to this throat, you know, where the little serpent is wrapped around Lord Shiva's throat. You know, so going back to the center, having tremendous creative power, and Ashlesha specifically, the power of persuasion is on their side. So they can either ignite motivation in others and connect to and help them connect to their higher selves. And so you'll see excellent coaches, therapists, psychologists, spiritual workers, psychics. I mean, people who can really go deep into what they're uniting with, and even have the ability to see another person's darkness and vulnerability and actually uplift it, even just through their speech. Through their word choice. So I recommend for Ashlesha people to be very careful of their word choice, saying a lot of its and that's instead of making speech more personal. You know, like in this English language, we're always going that, you know, or it, so it makes it more easier to exploit. And Ashlesha potentially is a very exploitive nakshatra. When its lower side can be exploitive, especially sexually, dominate, you know, with power, with manipulation, with conquering the enemy if it's so desires, if it's pushed into the corner, so to speak. So this is something I would encourage everyone to take a screenshot of that has Ashlesha, or I can also send the file later to anyone who would like to email me and have it. But these are just little pointers that I've, you know, they're very simple. They're simplified, actually. I had to do a lot of editing because there's so much to each nakshatra, and then each graha will change its function, right? Because it's really the graha is seizing the consciousness, and so that it's going to really activate a lot of those qualities. But yeah, this avoiding passing judgment and using that power of persuasion and influence towards true diplomacy and peacemaking is a very high choice for an Ashlesha. And to controlled speech, like that measurement of what is actually about to be released. Like, don't release the poison. Like, what are you about to release? They also can really withdraw. And I encourage people with strong Ashlesha in some ways to come forward. Some of them are very comfortable being in the background. I've noticed a lot over the years, if there's very prominent Ashlesha, even if they're a celebrity, even if there's someone that's in front of the camera, they're still very comfortable in supporting roles, or they're very comfortable being in the background in some way. Not every case, once again, but I'm just giving an example that some Ashlesha people, especially the more researcher types, the people more involved in the spiritual side of the energy, I think it's good that they come forward and share their knowledge and connect with people. But once again, this, like being aware of what's being said. Okay, any questions about any of this? It's a lot here.
You're muted, Inga, if you were saying anything. I'm not sure if you know that.
Okay.
Great point.
Okay.
Well,
I do have a question. Yeah.
Sure.
So when you're going through this information, I mean, I know that this has been covered elsewhere as well, but when you're trying to figure out, is this going to work in a more uplifting, positive fashion? Is this going to be more destructive? Are you looking at to see what's going on with the Lord of the Nakshatra, Mercury? Or are you just trying to figure out what's going on with the planet in the nakshatra? How do you determine which way it's going to go?
Well, let's say, see, your question is kind of two-sided. So when you think about it, someone has a thrash planet, a thrash graha in Ashlesha. They more than anyone need to elevate that energy. I don't know why we don't take responsibility. You know what I mean? So
Well, no. I totally understand that, but I mean,
Okay.
when you're first looking at the person's chart and you're trying to
Yeah.
see without them taking responsibility,
Right? They may never.
yeah, the course naturally going the way it was, and that's a good point that you bring up. That astrologically, that yeah, we need to say, am I going to take responsibility for this? But before we do, how do you see what the autopilot tendency will be? That's what I mean.
Oh God, yeah. Okay. Well, certain grahas, of course, instigate some of the harsher sides of Ashlesha.
Mhm.
Okay. And certain aspects will, so I think, yeah, this would definitely be something where you would need to know the foundations of Jyotish
Yeah.
before you understood this. But I can say that
Mhm.
Rahu with certain grahas tends to really instigate a severe side.
Okay.
Now that severe side can be used towards tapasya,
Mhm.
and things of that nature. But in our culture, because we do not live in a society that values higher consciousness, we
Mhm.
don't value what's really to be valued. So when you think about it that way, a lot of people are going to be coming through a lower lens.
Right.
And as a reader, I'm sure you see it. A lot of people don't really know what to do with the sanskars that are blinding them. And Ashlesha can be particularly blinding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Rahu in Ashlesha type probably don't.
I don't want to limit people once
astrologer as
again.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people will have Rahu and Ashlesha, so
Yes.
please.
Well,
that-
it doesn't have to be limiting. It can just be that they need to be aware that that's a potential tendency that they have.
Definitely. Shani, any of the grahas dealing with secrecy already.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. So you can get, or poison like Rahu.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's with a benevolent graha like Moon, Venus, depending on if they're really benevolent, yeah, I've just seen so many different things. There have been some very severe. You get Mangal, you get Mars with Rahu and Ashlesha, and if the rest of the horoscope supported it, that alignment right there, that's intense.
Yeah. Okay.
And the person would really need to be aware of that.
Yeah. The only reason I was asking, because a lot of people will write on questions and say things like, my moon is in this nakshatra, so therefore I must be this way. And I just wanted I wanted to see if you could help clarify what you did, how to qualify that, because I don't think it's that simple that you just have.
No, and moon is often benevolent. I mean, if she's waxing, she's waxing half the time, waning half the time. I mean, there's all these things to consider, but even when she's waning, she can be benevolent. Mm-hmm. She has no enemies.
Right.
So we look at Chandra, we look at the reason for birth, right? The Janma Nakshatra, what's incarnating the manas, the mind that's incarnating, the qualities. A lot of times that's not going to be enough to say whether a nakshatra is going to be benevolent or directed in a proper way or severe.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So here's where we get to more of what you were asking me earlier. So tikshna, of course, this word actually can be translated in a few different ways. And in books and all these different places, I keep seeing sharp or dreadful or, but there are other meanings to this word in Sanskrit, actually, depending on how you're using it. So self-abandoning, even ascetic, or severely ascetic, like severe renunciation. So with a nakshatra like Ashlesha, you're gonna have a severe or sharp quality to it, even if it is benevolent. Okay, that's just so it can refer to weapons, poison, and it can even be used for sharp language. And an Ashlesha person can literally reduce you through their words. If they have certain alignment, they can just burn you to ash, or sink their teeth in. So. It's Rakshasa. So it's protective and defensive. Rakshasa does not translate to demon, guys. You know?
Yeah.
So I often have this, you know, and I even read about Robin and all these things, and I just look and I'm always like, there's always two sides. We need to consider that. So Rakshasa, there is a protective, defensive side, and it can also even refer to the tribal people who protect nature. You know, that are more harsh or severe. They have different habits than the civilized people.
The heathens.
The heathens. Right. So, that's awesome. But yeah, it's protective and defensive. It's dharma is the motivation. So you think about dharma, you know, and you do see people that are very set on taking a definitive path of action. You see them with Ashlesha. You do see this path. Lord Shiva is the action of the Trimurti. So we've got the, you know, the king of the yogis, and one of his names is Nageshwara, right? And so here we get to this Ashleshana Shakti, and this is undeniable. So you see here the approaching of the serpent from above, the trembling below, resulting in the destruction of the victim. And, you know, and so I have a little example here. Oops, let me see. Of Harry Truman, as Ashlesha Nakshatra, some grahas there. Inge, you may want to remind me which grahas. I know that Dr. Arjun Paiji has used this example, and it's a very good example because he was unforgiving and unregretful when he actually dropped the bombs. He was cruel. It was not a very human-like reaction.
He was having one of the natural malefic planets like Mangal.
Yeah.
Side.
It's Mars, right?
Mars,
yes.
Yeah.
No, that one's intense. I've seen that one.
If I remember correctly, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that one can be a bit intense because you get the activity of Mars is to already guard, protect, be passionate. Is already an intense graha, you know, can be even dogmatic. Right, so you have uniting that with Ashlesha can be severe. It can be, but yeah, you do see these examples. You see these people that even when we were talking earlier about Rishi, the serpent Rishi, Arbuda, he actually, one of the reasons the gods had called upon him was to help them remove the guilt of their sacrifice. Now, so Ashlesha does have a link to guilt and shame and hiding and those things, or not being able to feel guilt, you know, or the shame that you should feel. There are things that you can do that you should retract and go, I should not have done that. So there can be a very unforgiving, cruel
side to it.
Lashing out, yes. And an inability to feel guilt. So, and gratefulness even. So a good practice for Ashlesha is to always consider their actions, no matter how small, you know, always be in consideration of their actions, and also being grateful. Mm-hmm. You know, bowing the head, being grateful. That's because this, you know, I was thinking of, you know, oh yeah, the other thing is Hiroshima and Nagasaki, both of those bombs were dropped during the sun was transiting Ashlesha at that time. This is very interesting. Yeah, and you get that raw power of Surya, you know, it's just, this nakshatra tends to have a bit of intensity to it no matter what. Okay, so any questions about any of that before I?
No, made perfect sense. That's good.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so so then we also have in medical astrology, which I wanted to pull in a little bit, because through understanding the body and through understanding our physical surroundings, we can also see the functionings of the mind. And it's interesting because Ashlesha is very commonly connected with connective tissue. Mm-hmm. And the things that bind the joints, right, and hold everything together. And also even the ear, right? The ear is all cartilage, you know, and the nails, you know, those things in the body. So And there's some sources I've heard also that will say that Ashlesha is the gallbladder of the time person. Of the time person or Kala Purush. So do your own research. I always tell everyone, but you're going to see when you really dig deep, you're going to see both. You're going to see that it's the ears of the Kala Purush or the gallbladder. I think it's very fascinating, and we could go on about that, but I'll just leave it to everyone's own intuition. But you can also see the word Arbuda in Sanskrit also can refer to connective tissue of the lungs. It can refer to swelling. In medical Sanskrit. So there's some interesting things here because this is that infection, the poisons, right? The poisons going through the body. There's many old mantras to the Nagas for healing joint pain, inflammation, and sprains. So yeah.
Joint pain is also a very frequented sickness, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Rheumatism, all of that.
Yes,
Arthrosis.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, once again, a lot of other consideration needs to be done here, including Vargas, right? But there is a theme here, and I've seen it because I take notes on medical always. And also, Ashlesha is said to be Jala and Prithvi, which is, water and earth. Danger from poisoning, exposure to elemental contamination. We get the radiation again, like people who, work with nuclear energy or any kind of chemicals. Or if you get really positive influences here, you may get someone who can recover, digest poisons, like someone who may get mercury poisoning and be able to flush it out of their body, whereas the other person, it really destroys, their system. And for those of anyone who's interested, I just have the Nag Champa or the Champaka tree is associated with Ashlesha.
Yes, beautiful smell, no?
Yes.
Also,
and the flower is very, it's very sharp too. The flower has a very sharp shape, and it's very beautiful and fragrant. And also those who work with plant medicine. I've seen this with Mrigashirsha as well, or Mrigashira, and Shatabishak. I've seen a lot of people who work with those plant medicines or want to alter their states of consciousness. But Ashlesha, I see as a theme coming up with that a lot. Or people who are dead against it. People just do not want to put any toxicity in their body. Okay?
One or the other.
It depends on which graha, once again, or I've seen people gung-ho about it. They're going to throw up and they're going to alter their consciousness. They're working with poisons, chemicals, drugs, even to that point. So any questions here?
Well, one time I would like to ask you back that you have said that it depends upon which graha placed in this nakshatra. But the activation of it, we have 27, respectively 28 nakshatras, yeah?
Yes.
So, Ashlesha, prominently packed by ascendant or planets or key planets. But this, let's call it one space, Ashlesha. It is important where it sits as well.
Yeah.
And when it gets it activated through its lordship, which is Mercury, for example.
Right. And as I've come to understand, we have to be careful with lordship with nakshatras because they're really, in some way, they are the gods above even, like when we look at it that way, it's really truly just an activation and more than a lordship, which I know that you already know. So, but yes, wherever Ashlesha is sitting, then we can also get like, what do you call it? The position the nakshatras are in, if you're literally using a purely based nakshatra system, which I will not go into here. It will take way too long. So, but you can also examine each, like if you're using the Sarvatobhadra chakra, for instance, and you start examining the sounds that are connected with each nakshatra and the nakshatra wheel, and you start looking at it, you'll really start seeing why each nakshatra is in its place, and where it becomes auspicious or inauspicious, so on and so forth. Like how you count spaces from Mool nakshatra, right?
You're talking about like the Tara.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can get into that, but I would say activation through Vimshottari dasha, yes. Mercury, and any graha that's sitting there. Now, if you have your lagna in Ashlesha, that's going to be something that follows you your whole life. That's marking your path along the ecliptic, so to speak. That's marking that's kind of, you're in that.
It's consistently a part of your theme.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that would be true as well as for the Lagna Lord and the Atmakarika as well. Would you look at it in that regard too?
Oh, Ryan, you know this already. You're probably more intelligent than me. Yes, of course.
No. I'm just trying to be clear for people who are listening.
Totally.
So they can...
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I've heard you say a very beautiful thing about, I believe you phrase it as the Lords of Bondage and...
Oh, yeah, the Lords of Bondage and Liberation, right.
Liberation,
Yeah.
Yes. That's a very Ashlesha term there.
Yeah. I might have a little Ashlesha in my term.
Okay. Something in a moksha house, maybe.
Maybe.
Anyway, I don't know. I get a feeling. But with Ashlesha, yeah, Lords of, that's very interesting. But yeah, that's very true. You get Lagnesh, you get Lagna, you get Atmakarika. Yeah, very strong.
Yeah.
Throughout the life. There's going to be a lens of that nakshatra always.
Right. And I think what Inga was bringing up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Inga, but the idea that, like, if you've got a planet in the nakshatra, and say when someone runs like a Mercury dasha, well, then that planet, the way that planet, its nature, what it represents, like as you mentioned, being Surya or Mongol and so on, how it combines with that, the energy and the power of that nakshatra, that can become activated or felt within the person's life during those particular dashas. Is that what you were getting at, Inga, or did I misread?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
is that true?
Sorry, Inge, if I didn't answer you correctly.
No, you did. I'm just being clear. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, but for sure, he's exactly right. So yeah, That's what I've observed.
Okay.
And yeah, the graha is going to be so important to how that filtration happens.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, absolutely.
Okay. Good.
So
Yes.
just to get it to the end, this point is Mercury dasha running as a Mahadasha, as a Antadasha, so it is quite a long time. Yeah. So
Yes.
these energies, or this energy has some time to develop also. Yeah.
Yes, and
It will.
Yes, because with Mercury's already alchemical. Mercury already is the alchemist, the magician, really. There's a part of Mercury that is the archetypal alchemist. And you see that through speech. They connect Mercury to speech all the time, throughout mantras. They also call Mercury and Surya the favorite of Dhanvantri, the god of medicine, right? So there's something with Mercury where there's always a process of transformation going on anyway. Look at what words are. It's so strange. We take sound, we take breath into us, and our vocal cords are constricting and shaping this, our mouth is shaping this sound, and it comes out as a shape, as a word. And so during Mercury dasha is a very interesting time in someone's life, no matter where Mercury is sitting, but specifically if there's an activation of Ashlesha, like Ashlesha is very personal in the horoscope, then you're going to really go through a time of transformation. There's really going to be a lot of alchemy that's happening. And that whether you want it or don't want it, so it's almost better to just surrender to it.
Yes.
So,
Right. Thanks, Eve.
You're welcome. So I only have two more things here. So I just have addressing the Ananta Shesha here, which, I talked about in the beginning with you guys, kind of pre-session. So we've got Uttara Bhadrapada, who shouldn't be neglected either for connecting to Ananta Shesh, and I'm going to talk about that at a later time, but that's more in detail because with Uttara Bhadrapada, there's also a link to the Sudarshana Chakra. Okay, so that's a whole other thing. But with Ashlesha, there is that extreme protective strength once again that you do see in Lakshman, Sri Lakshmana, and I believe in Shatrughna Kumar as well, right? His brother, his twin brother. Am I getting this wrong? I believe they both were Ashlesha. And then we've got Balaram as well, who when he was leaving his body, they said that people saw a white serpent come out of his mouth, exit his mouth. He was also, Lord Krishna, Lord Ram, Vishnu always brings his Shesha, Ananta Shesh with him. So, so if you think about Balaram, he was very quick to, very quick to be in arms in a way. He's very protective. But he also was able to go between both sides. And this is a higher side of Ashlesha if it learns to master it. It's the power of negotiation, the power to bring and connect two things together that wouldn't normally be connected, but they do have to practice patience with that. Because a part of their insight's already so penetrating that they feel like they already know the answer sometimes. Very intuitive people typically. But when they practice this bringing together of two sides and they go between two sides, they actually have a great power there. So,
that's maybe why they meet these controversial situations also.
Yes, because that borderlines. Yeah. It borderlines on, yes, definitely. And there's a lot of controversy around this nakshatra.
Yes.
So,
right.
but I just wanted to honor the Ananta Shesha connection. And then, so we've got the yoni, which is the male cat. And I just wanted to bring that into perspective because people don't realize what cats are like. I mean, I rescue cats, I know. Like, I have a house full right now.
You're the cat lady.
I'm the crazy cat lady. So, and I have my 21-year-old daughter here too, who has her 2 cats, and she just moved. So we've got literally a legion of cats. So, and watching them, they do have many qualities like a serpent. You can see even how they coil. But they also have this powerful regenerative side. So they purr and restore their muscle tissue. A lot of scientists are connecting their purr to the restorative energy of their body and mind. So they coil in this little, this resting place, and they just purr and restore themselves, just like the snake sheds the skin. Yes. So the Druids of ancient times did connect Ashlesha to rejuvenation and regeneration. Or sorry, not Ashlesha, but the cat and the serpent both had elements of that.
Okay.
And then royal ladies in Egypt would have a cat on the bottom of their chair to increase their fertility or their sexual attractiveness. So there is something also about Ashlesha and sex, which I didn't get into too much because that's almost an over-amplified part of this nakshatra. It can be overly sensual or try to control that too, to a point. Look at Gandhi. You get people that want to control the indriyas, right? Because they understand how destructive they can be. So, but you also get people who really indulge them, especially if it's combined with a lot of, like, let's say Kripika or, any energy coming from Agni that wants to consume, or doesn't know boundaries or limits. Then, and you get Ashlesha with it, you can really get a tricky, you can get like a problem there. But yeah, so I wanted to bring up the fact of cats because we don't often talk about the womb or the yoni that these nakshatras have, which is, for pairing and relationships often. And there's something important about that. There's something important about that. There's something important about the nature of the animal that they're speaking of. And so you can see a lot of the qualities of the cat in Ashlesha, but you really need to observe them. So here I have these pictures and you can just go online and see so many stories of how these little cats can run a bear up a tree. I mean, they just, these little guys, and they have the force and the confidence and the ferocity to run a bear. And they both hiss, right? And in ancient India, they had something called dog and cat poison, which was from the bite of a dog or a cat. Like in Ayurveda, you'll read how to heal cat poison. So there's a lot of bacteria in the mouth of a cat. If you get really bitten by a cat, you need to treat that. They actually have a poison. And martial artists, you think of how many martial artists have copied the movements of cats and serpents. The only other one I'd throw in there is the mantis. So those three are constantly imitated. Yes, yes. So any questions, guys?
Well,
it's a lot of info.
So far we go. What about you, Ryan? Anything coming up into your brain?
I think most of the questions that came up I asked. There's definitely a lot to digest.
Yeah, because this is all I had prepared because I knew that. And it's really just scratching. I feel scratching the surface. That's why I am going to be writing a book on nakshatras, because when you're looking at this, you're looking at divinity. I mean, we're just small reflections of this. Humans are so self-important. And we run around and we're really a part of the larger program. That we're not as independent as we think we like to think we are.
Right.
And so there's so much depth here to each one. But yeah, I was going to prepare horoscopes. I had looked at a few horoscopes and saw that, like, for instance, Michael Jackson has his Shukra as Venus in Ashlesha. So you see that, look at how he wore his makeup, how he morphed his face, all the constant transformation on his image, and his even the way he came off like a serpent, the way he could move, the way he could hypnotize or mesmerize. These are just little examples, but you also get the famous dancer, Martha Graham. Also, who Inge, I believe we covered in one of the Saptarishi Nakshatra discussions under Rohini. We had talked about her with Rohini, but if you look at her horoscope, she also has very prominent Ashlesha. And I believe it's her Chandra. I believe it's her moon. So she's a classic Janma Nakshatra, Ashlesha. And look she's always wearing the makeup, disguising herself. Her movements, once again, are so fluid. It's like a dancer or a martial artist. And she also had very tumultuous experiences in partnership because she didn't control. The control of the emotions wasn't there. We're not taught that in our culture. And people who do often become a bit too stern. It's like, it's a balance there, right? So, but you can see these very famous people, a lot of celebrities. You'll see Ashlesha very prominent in celebrity horoscopes.
Correct. Can we stop the screen share for some time?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, now bear with me. So, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I see you. So we have.
Okay, I have a quick question. So the book that you're working on, you said you were working with someone who's interested in Celtic lore. Is that right?
Well, yeah, she's a student of those schools, and and so her teacher is also, she's been working for a while with a lodge as well.
Okay.
And we kind of came together because I started including her in my workshops because I noticed how much the feminine energy of just that reconnecting, and feminine can be in a male or female body. I mean, I'm not referring to only women, but that energy, the nature in some way just becomes so neglected, and we get into astrology and we get into like mathematics. That's what I feel, at least. It's like we're starting to get into this very principled study, and that's great. You cannot learn Jyotish without both masculine and feminine principle, right? But as most ancient people saw the plants, the stones, the animals, the stars as our relatives. I mean, they had what they call star people, and everything was personal. Even their language was open-ended. It wasn't constricting and binding. It wasn't a spell, so to speak. With the English language, you get a lot of command. They spoke in circular motion, and they really had a direct relationship with life. And I think as far as I'm concerned with writing a book on nakshatras, I'm very interested in bridging that gap again, because we have a separate word for nature. Mm-hmm. I mean, if that doesn't baffle anyone.
So is she coming at it from just from the lore of the work, or is she coming at it from an astrological perspective? I'm just curious because I've tried to do some research into astrology related to Celtic religion.
Oh my God, we would love to pull you in. We're gonna.
Well, I haven't found anything. That's why I'm trying to figure out.
The more the better.
Okay. All right.
I know, like I'm always trying to pull people in. It's like, more sharing knowledge, the better. But I would really trust what you've come up with. She's been actually trained through a school of thought, and I'd have to let her explain.
Okay. I was just curious. Yeah, we don't have to.
But no, it's really amazing. It's something it's starting to rebirth in Jyotish, but it's also having to be reborn, because we really value structured consciousness, like structured mental set in this culture. So we have time, we have the watch. We see time as also, we have the disconnection of Rahu and Ketu, right? So we have future and past, and one's way over here and one's way over there. We're no longer a circular unit. We're not one chain of life. So I think that's so important in Jyotish, but she has no astrological background. So it's very interesting. Okay. It's very interesting because I kind of represent that, and I just pull her in with all of the knowledge that she has about the plant and the animal and the mineral world.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's just such fascinating, ties. Like, for example, Odin sacrificed his one eye to get the gift of poetry, which is a Venetian thing, and Venus is supposed to have
Shukracharya.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's all different kinds of things that I've seen in that, and nothing really specific astrological. So that's why I was curious. But so anyway, yeah. Maybe
well, astrological. I think this is where you could pull it into the nakshatras, because all of those same Vedic gods and goddesses, you can find them in Nordic Odinism, and you can find it in the Welsh Celtism. You can find it in different places, and even in the Native American, the indigenous people of this continent, you can find a lot of the same repeating. You can find people that have sacrificed an eye, or people that have done this or that, and that's very interesting about Odin now.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
There's numerous things like that are just these kind of layovers that you think, wow, that's kind of fascinating that it showed up in this particular culture, and specific to he did it to get the gift of poetry, which is a Venetian quality.
Yes, that's such a beautiful point. And also Shukracharya being the teacher of the demons.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we think about that, like who were these demons? And there's references that he was a bit uncomfortable. Like there's little references to the fact that he says these Shiv Bhaktas want me to do things that a Brahmin shouldn't do.
Right.
So he's once again in the middle there too. There's that middle. Yeah. That's very fascinating, because Odin had some of those qualities as well. I'd have to go back.
Well, yeah, we'll talk. We'll save that for another. We'll save that for another talk. But it is fascinating stuff. So, anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Combine mythology. For sure. Okay, we come to an end of Ashlesha. Unless we can combine it in one sentence.
Go for it, Eve.
Oh my God. I just hope I didn't run my mouth too much. I felt like you guys didn't really have time to answer any questions.
No.
So I just felt like I ran my mouth. You cannot sum up any nakshatra in one word. I could say that the bonding principle, the embracing, entwining, or constricting principle of this nakshatra, if I was going to leave anyone with anything, then I would say to really pay attention to that and its ability to either inflict poison or bring medicine. But Ashlesha, people always have to transmute poison into medicine. It's not just like they start off with medicine. Matter of fact, I've met a lot of people, if they have the graha and Ashlesha, any graha, there's a self-deprecating side.
A self what?
Deprecating, like a self, like an insecure side.
Insecure.
Yeah.
All right.
Or a side that's not, it's like a poison they're dealing with. They're dealing with their own darkness in some way. And so when they go through the alchemy of that, it actually puts them in a unique place because they can support others in their darkness or their insecurity. They can become that Ananta Shesha, which is the support of others instead of this constricting energy, right? So I would say I would leave
it. Well put it, Eve. Thank you so much.
This is such an honor. Thank you guys for thinking of me this way, and I hope to share more in the future. If you guys want to hear me run my mouth,
yes,
I always need a place for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Then he said, please think on this fundamental question of astrology. Why are you born in so-and-so Lagna, Taurus Lagna, Karka Lagna? Why not in some